In today's video I'm going to show you how you can build this airport right here without any fancy tools, 3D printing, just paper, glue and some simple affordable modeling equipment. I will show you how you build the base of a model airport, buildings like a terminal and hangars, add modeling grass and some scenery items, and all of the airport ground markings. This guide is suitable for all ages, all kinds and scales of model and toy aircraft, and doesn't take much time to build. Let's get started by making the plan for our model airport. Its size will be 90 by 60 centimeters. In the length of the airport we'll have a runway, dark grey. The rest of the airport will be lighter grey, where in one corner we'll add a terminal with an ATC tower on top. There will be space for 4 aircraft models here. Then we'll add 2 airplane hangars. Modeling grass will be added in between the runway and the apron, and we'll add a road for some cars on the airport. There is some leftover space on the left where we'll add an emergency service station with a heliport on top. On the grass on the bottom left we'll add some scenery, around the runway taxiway signs, some details like a red and white box and a windsock, and not to forget all of the ground markings. The yellow lines that the airplanes follow when taxiing and the red lines indicating the parking stand areas of the aircraft. And with this plan in mind, we will start building and I will show and tell everything that I do and use. Starting off the tools and materials that I'm going to use. For in total €5 I've bought different colored paper. A light and darker tint of grey and a yellow, light blue and white piece of paper. With these papers we're going to build the base, all of the buildings, some ground markings and details, almost everything. Then the tools that we're going to use. A set of markers, different colors and also this yellow paint marker. A sharp Stanley or modeling knife, a pair of scissors, measuring tools like a ruler and a protractor, a roll of tape, I use frog tape, a normal pencil, and to glue everything down I use this glue gun that I got from Temu for €13, and I'm also going to use a glue stick. Next I will show the scenery items that I use, which also come from Temu, starting with these palm trees and this set of colorful flowers. And finally a roll of modeling grass. That are all the tools and materials I'm using in this video, all links are down below. Let's start building then. We'll start with making the base. With the runway that's going to be the darker tint of grey and the apron the light tint of grey. I'm going to cut out a strip of the darker tint of grey and tape it to the light tint of grey. The width of this strip is 15 centimeters, which will also be the width of the runway. Also, I cut out an extra extension of the runway, as the airport is going to be a bit wider than the paper is. So with all of the extension parts in place, I will tape everything together. First I nicely line up all of the pieces of paper, after which I simply put some pieces of tape on the back. And when we then turn the paper around, this is what it looks like. On the dark paper we'll make a runway and the light grey paper will be the ramp with terminal and hangar. I put all of the planes in position to see if my plan that I made on my computer also works out in real life. Luckily it did. Now I'm measuring out how much space a single airplane needs along the terminal. With the pencil I put some references on the paper, and like so I also know where the terminal is going to be. I did the same for the hangars, as you can see the dark grey stripes right here. And also for the terminal, which will be about 30 centimeters long and 6 centimeters in width. Here I am drawing out how much space an airplane needs to taxi onto the airport runway, so I later know where I can put the modeling grass. And here I measure out on the edge of the airport how much space I can use for the emergency services building. I now drew out the whole plan that I made on my computer. Using the models, I checked how much space a model takes up, so I know the width of the hangar and the aircraft stands, and how much space was left over for the modeling grass and the SOS service building. Next, I will start making the building, starting with the terminal. For the terminal, I am going to fold a simple box out of paper. The terminal will be 30 centimeters in length, 6 in width and 4 centimeters tall. This I measured out on the dark gray paper by placing pencil markings and then cutting it out using the modeling knife. Then I started folding the box. There you have it. Then I'm going to make the sides of the terminal. I cut out some more pieces of paper to the correct size and I'm going to glue them into the sides of the terminal. And after the sides were installed, I cut some rectangles out of the light blue paper. Those represent windows which I stick to the side of the terminal. And like so, you have built a simple, basic, though effective airport terminal. The next step is adding an ATC tower on top of the terminal. For that I will use the cardboard tube that comes inside a kitchen roll. I'm going to roll paper around the tube to make it look like an actual ATC tower, though first I will cut off a bit of the roll as otherwise the ATC tower will be way too tall. I figured this might be a good height and I marked where I'm going to cut it. Next I cut 2 pieces of paper to size and I'm going to glue and roll them around the roll. For that I'm going to use Pritt Stick glue stick. Just trimming off the edges here and like so, you have got a nice ATC tower. At least for the most part, as I will add a roof to it as well. I take a round piece like this can of paint, I draw a circle around it and I cut it out. Then I stick it to the top and like so you have a nice roof for your ATC tower. Though before I added the roof, I wanted to add a little bit more texture to the ATC tower, so using a dark blue marker I painted these windows. And using the glue gun then I stuck the roof on top, finishing the ATC tower and thereby the whole terminal. If you think really, is this it? Aren't there any more details that I can add to my terminal? Yes there are, and I will tell them all after I have completed the model airport at the end of this video, so be sure to stick around for any cool suggestions that you can still add to your airport. Next we'll start working on the airplane hangars, which are simply 2 huge roofs with walls covering the aircraft. I cut out 2 pieces of paper and I'm going to fold them into a shape which makes it look like a nice airport hangar. I will make 3 folds. On the sides at 2 centimeters from the edge I make 2 walls, and in the middle I will have 1 more fold to make a gabled roof. This already gets the shape of an airport hangar. I then did the same for the other hangar and I stuck the 2 together using the glue stick. And like so, we have a dual hangar, though the paper isn't very strong and the roof hangs down a lot. So my advice for you would be to use really thick and strong paper for this, if you want to make it even neater. Though we'll complete it like this. On one side there will be a huge wall in the hangar, so I stuck the hangar to the paper, and by gluing it down with the right width of the hangar, it already got a nicer shape. I then cut around it, and like so we have a wall on one side, though the other side of the hangar is still sloppy and not the width that I want it to be. Therefore I cut out a strip of paper which exactly meets the width that I want the hangars to be, and I glued this strip to the hangars. And like that, the hangars are finished and they nicely meet the measurements that I want them to be. With some stronger paper, I think I would have had a much better result, though this works. Next, we'll build the SOS Emergency Services building by simply folding another box. The box is 6 centimeters high and 7 centimeters in depth. Really basic, really simple. I will add some details later on, but this is it for all of the airport buildings. And now it's already looking more like an actual airport that we planned in the beginning. The next step is detailing. We'll be adding modeling grass. In the planning phase, we've already predetermined the spots where the grass will be, and I have drawn out on the light gray paper where these exact spots for the grass are. The next step is then nicely cutting out pieces of grass to fit on the airport. I put the grass piece in the correct position. Using a pencil, I then sketch out where I will need to cut it, and using scissors I then cut the grass into its shape. Before gluing down the grass, I remove all of the dirt and then I apply glue. After gluing down the grass, I cut off all of the excess. And like so, we move to the other side of the airport and perform the same trick again. Important to note is that the edges of the grass need to be stuck down really thoroughly, so apply some extra glue there. And in the middle we'll add a larger piece of grass, though the method here isn't any different. And like that, 3 of the 4 pieces of grass are stuck down. Now before I can place down the final piece of modeling grass, I want to stick down this piece of road, which is simply a huge piece of grey paper cut to shape. And with the road in place, on the bottom left we can now add the final piece of modeling grass. Here you see how I have the large roll of grass and I measure out with the pencil the piece I will need to cut out. I leave a bit extra on the edges, which I then can easily trim off with a pair of scissors. And like that, all of the grass is in place as well. The next step is adding the ground marking, simply using colored markers, yellow and red. I lost some footage where I added all of the taxiway lines, though the most important thing when drawing ground markings is that if an airplane is taxiing somewhere, it cannot hit another plane with, for example, its wingtip. A good way to get an idea of what ground markings to make is by taking a look on Google Earth and seeing what your local airport has for ground markings. The same goes for the runway markings that I drew out on white paper, which I will then cut out and stick to the runway. If you're unsure what markings to make, there are plenty of YouTube videos explaining all of the runway markings for you. Here I have cut them all out, and with the glue stick I am going to stick them down one by one. I didn't measure too much, but I wanted to make sure all of these center line markings were neatly spaced out. And with the runway markings down, all of the ground markings are now on the airport. Next I'm going to add scenery and some tiny details, starting with these tropical palm trees. For €2 you can get a bag of 10 of these trees. You can get a set of colorful flowers for under €5. Before sticking down the palm trees I removed the brown base, as it doesn't look too neat. And using the glue gun I then stuck the palm trees down onto the modeling grass. And also on the other side of the emergency services building I added a small palm tree. And next some colorful flowers, once again sticking them down using the glue gun. For the flowers a pair of tweezers came in handy, so that's another tool that you might need to build an airport. Next, on some yellow paper I am going to make ground markings. I have a black fine liner which I will use to create taxiway signs, aircraft stand numbers, and with this red marker I will make a nice sign for the emergency services building. Numbers 1, 2, 3 and 4 will be around the terminal area, 30-12 will indicate the runway, and H1 and H2 will be the hangar signs. For the taxiway signs, I folded one edge, put glue on there and then stuck it down. Important to note, it's hard to stick something onto the modeling grass, so use strong glue like this hot glue gun. With that we're also done with the detailing. I forgot to add road markings onto the road, so using a white marker I did that. And like that the airport is completely finished and we can start adding the models and vehicles on there. On Amazon I've ordered this airport playset and these emergency services. One set with an airplane model and some airport equipment like this baggage cart with a container and some baggage. Also a catering truck and some aircraft stairs. The other set comes with a helicopter, 2 kinds of ambulances, and both sets come with some cones and signs. The airplane models that I have on the airport are from Temu. Child-friendly, affordable, and they won't break easily. I can recommend Daron Aircraft for any children, as they have child-friendly and relatively cheap airplane models for sale. Though 1 to 400 or 500 scale models from for example Gemini jets perfectly fit on this airport as well. I completely forgot to make a heliport on top of the emergency services building. So I did that right here. And by putting the final vehicles into position, we now have a complete model airport. For about 10 euros in materials and 30 euros in tools, which you most likely have in home already, you can build a fantastic model airport. How much time did it take to build this? About 2 full afternoons. Before I end this video, I'd like to give a few more recommendations of things you can add to this airport. Around the terminal, you can add jet bridges, you can add more detailed windows, you can add texture on the roof like solar panels, and finally some light poles in between the aircraft stands. For the ground markings, you can add concrete tiles, a black taxiway outline along the yellow taxiway line. You can add more detailed markings like stop positions for different types of aircraft and a fuel extraction point in the ground. Furthermore, you can add weathering on your airport from the rubber tires screeching over the ground. And finally, you can add an ILS box and a windsock on your airport. For example, in the modeling grass. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions, be sure to ask them in the Discord or mail or DM me on Instagram. Be sure to share the airport that you built with the hashtag #MyMiniAirport. I'd love to see all your creations. Now that's it for today. Please consider to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.